Well, President Cyril Ramaphosa chaired a high-level committee meeting on South Sudan at the African Union Summit in Nouakchott in Mauritania earlier today. South Sudan has been engulfed in internal conflict that has seen thousands being displaced. For more on this, let's cross over live to our correspondent, Sarah Kimani. A very good evening to you, Sarah, from South Africa. Well, the meeting comes at a time as the signing of a peace agreement, but already there seem to be reports that the ceasefire has been broken.
Indeed, the meeting is still underway here in Mauritania. President Cyril Ramaphosa is the one chairing that meeting, and he's expected to receive a briefing from Omar al-Bashir of Sudan, who was one of the mediators of the talks that were held just last week in Sudan. Now, we understand, as you say there, that indeed the ceasefire has been violated. Remember, they had agreed to a ceasefire, a permanent ceasefire within 72 hours of signing of that agreement. But at midnight, that ceasefire was violated. And that is one of the issues that is going to be discussed here. President Ramaphosa saying that there needs to be some form of reward and punishment for those who either honor the ceasefire or those who violate it. Just probably one of the ways of saying that now the African continent is actually getting tired of the conflict in South Sudan, and saying that leaders will not be held responsible for their actions or misactions.
What does the chair on South Sudan say about some of the current developments taking place?
Well, we understand that apart from discussing the ceasefire, they'll also be discussing the contents of that agreement, whether now what next for South Sudan. Do they begin talks for a transitional government? Do they begin talks of forming a government of national unity? Does the country now start discussing whether to hold elections? But of course, there will be a drawback because of the talk that the country has, that the two warring factions have already violated the ceasefire. Now, who is in this meeting? President of Sudan, Omar al-Bashir, is there. Algeria is represented in that meeting. Uganda is represented by a minister. Kenya is also represented by a minister because President Kenyatta and President Museveni are not yet here. And the chairperson of the African Union, Paul Kagame, the president of Rwanda, is also in that meeting.
Are we expecting the two leaders to be possibly meeting on the sidelines of the AU summit?
We have not seen either Salva Kiir or Dr. Riek Machar, the opposition leader. Quite telling when you do not see them here. But President Salva Kiir usually attends African Union summits, but he is not in this particular one. Dr. Riek Machar, we still do not know where he is. In the statement that President Ramaphosa has issued here, he talked about South Africa having been a host of Dr. Riek Machar in the past. But remember, in the agreement that was signed, or during the talks that were held in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, the first talks that were chaired by the Prime Minister of Ethiopia, Dr. Abiy Ahmed, he said that there is need for the countries in the region to decide where Dr. Riek Machar will be staying, with all of them saying that he is still not welcome in the region. So those are also issues that will be spoken. What is the fate of Dr. Riek Machar? Is he going to be part of the government that will be formed? Should they decide on a government of national unity, or should they decide on a transitional government? But up to now, we have not seen either of them inside the talks, and neither have we seen them here in Mauritania.
At the Heads of State Summit tomorrow, what essentially can we forecast to be discussed?
Well, apart from the South Sudan peace talks and other crises in the region, we expect that the leaders will be talking about issues of the African continental free trade area. South Africa is among the countries that will be signing that agreement tomorrow. Remember, during the last summit, what President Ramaphosa did was only sign the protocol for the establishment, but this time we understand that he will be signing that agreement. That is quite a win for the African Union and a vote of confidence on this 1 billion people market. We also understand that Kenya and Rwanda will be pushing to have more countries ratify, because even with the signing, nothing more can happen and nothing can take off until 22 countries ratify. they'll also be discussing the elections, the upcoming elections in Zimbabwe, and the crisis that has been, surrounding those elections. They'll be discussing the transitional government. They'll be discussing the transition that is ongoing in Ethiopia and the upcoming elections in the Democratic Republic of Congo in December. But we also expect that tomorrow, President of France, Emmanuel Macron, will be here to discuss peace in the Sahel region and the issue of the jihadists in this region. Just yesterday, we understand the G5 force headquarters in Mali were attacked by jihadists and 2 soldiers died. So he will be coming here to push for African leaders within this region to work harder towards uniting the area and to fighting jihadists. Those are just some of the issues that will be discussed here.
Essentially, what has the consensus been in terms of African countries working together and calling for unity, specifically in some of the controversies that have taken place in many parts of Africa? If we just touch on what just happened in Zimbabwe, the Bulawayo blast there, also up there in Ethiopia, and some of the other issues that have been taking place.
Indeed, we understand that issues of conflict on the continent and, transitional elections and leaders who do not want to hand over power and just having peaceful elections will be discussed. And we understand that the leaders gathered here will be calling for free and fair elections and also insisting that the target that the continent has set itself of silencing the guns by 2020 will be achieved. They will be pushing countries that are still in conflict, including Burundi, the Democratic Republic of Congo, the Central African Republic, all these countries to work harder towards ending conflict within their borders. But they'll also be discussing the issue of refugees and the issue of migrants. This is one of the regions that produces most of the migrants to Europe, and so they will be discussing what solutions can be found. Remember, Africa has the biggest population of young people, so they will also be seeking solutions to that and discussing job creation, women issues, all those. Quite a full tray for the presidents gathered here.
Thank you very much for your time this evening, Cyril Kimani for SABC News. Just giving us some of the details of what we can expect on the upcoming program at the AU Summit. Of course, it is the very first time as head of state that Cyril Ramaphosa is attending. We'll take a short